And please join me in welcoming both Mark and Laura. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Gary decided to give us wired mics this morning because he thought the electricity might be too much, so we're tethered. Welcome on this beautiful Minnesota Sunday morning. Thank you for being here. Today we're going to talk about higher consciousness, what it is, kind of some different definitions, what we're experiencing, why now, what to expect. And Mark's got a great astrology background, so he's going to tie in some of the planetary influences. And as we talked, I met Mark in Sedona going on one of those magical tours with my family, and over the years we have discovered many, many vortexes in Sedona. It is magical. I have to say, here at Lake Harriet, this is a vortex. This energy space that we create here is an energy vortex, and it's a pleasure to be here and to elevate the frequency. And that's what we're going to do today, is we're going to elevate and amplify your frequency, attune you, kind of move you up into a higher escalation. And we're going to start this morning with just a simple meditation, a simple grounding, just a simple breathing to bring us all into our present moment, present bodies right now. So, Mark?
Well, thank you for being here, and I'd like everybody to stand up. One of the things that many people aren't aware of is we have these energy centers called chakras, but the feet and hands are significant parts of that energy system. And so standing, I've always found that, especially with where I'm living, it facilitates this type of exercise, if you will. Close your eyes and begin to breathe into the upper part of your lungs. And as you're breathing in, feel that you're pulling the earth's energies, the chi from the earth, up through your feet, your legs, into that upper chest. And then you exhale out your diaphragm, actually by pushing in that part of your physical form to release. Now you do these breathing cycles, and as you continue to breathe upward, elevate past the lungs, past the neck, the head, and go into those upper chakras, or the etheric body of oneself. And then exhale back down through the body, the feet, into the ground, earth beneath you. And as you do this, just be aware of any distracting thought. See if you can view the source of it, how quickly it happens, or how long you can maintain yourself in this cycle. And as we do this, we're individually calling on our spirit and soul essence to descend into us. We're fully accepting its presence. And with it, the higher mind and its influence.
Take a deep breath. Feel your heart and your lungs expand and fill up. Feel that loving energy in your heart. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. Smile at your neighbor. Say good morning, I'm happy you're here. And when you're ready, you may sit down. And Mark is a really soft talker. So thank you for the person that flagged our attention. So we'll make sure that we do speak up. Sometimes when we work in the energy, it kind of softens the throat chakra. So notice where you felt it in your body this morning. Notice how you felt in that meditation. And as we talk about levels of consciousness, there are many levels of consciousness.
Yes, just consider that we exist in various dimensions at the same time. And where we place our thoughts, actions, emotions even, will tend to determine which dimensional part of ourselves that we're dwelling in. This is a common problem that we have when we're together.
We almost drove in separate cars this morning. No, just kidding.
And it's not a problem, it's just expanded energy fields can create the resonance bouncing back and forth, that's all. Is this better now? Anyway, so we're existing in multiple dimensions at the same time. We're existing sometimes in our emotional body more so than the physical body or the mental body. And all these levels of consciousness are part of who we are. If you want to call it the key, is awareness of where you're placing yourself, both internally and externally. We're influenced deeply by external conditions, the collective influence of humanity as well. We're sharing it. We're influenced by our ancestral lineage. It plays itself out in us sometimes in very, very unconscious ways and habits and patterns. And all you have to do is visit a family member and have it reflected back to you. And so understanding the difference between a higher and lower mind it's kind of like training. A higher mind influence would be something with intention, something that would be more of an intuition, an inspirational energy from, if you want to call it spirit or soul essence. And obviously lower mind, it's very, very simple and easy to watch how we respond with the lower mind, watch how the body holds tension and energy, watch how the mental thoughts are just kind of rapid and scattered. And
so, Mark, I'm wondering if we talk a little bit about the different levels of consciousness, the physical, the mental, the emotional, and then give them a reference bouncing between, as you're mentioning that, the ego and the mind.
Well, being in the physical is almost like communicating to your body and being consciously aware of what the body's communicating. It could be in the form of pain, hunger, thirst, irritability. So that level of awareness, you would think is basic, but it really, for many of us, we kind of dismiss it because the mind, the lower mind especially, thinks it's always going to be in control and doesn't necessarily want input from other parts of ourselves.
So our physical body, we often talk about our third dimension, and I see your energies. I actually see you in multiple levels of energy, your physical body, your emotional body, which is energy outside your physical body, your spiritual body, and your energetic body. And all of those I call as levels of our bodies and levels of consciousness, because we're elevating through all of those. We have a physical body change, our DNA is physically changing. Our emotional bodies are changing if we're going through emotional assessments, emotional understandings, emotional shifts. Our spiritual being, our belief systems are changing, and our energy fields are changing. So for me, when I think about our different levels of energy, I think of those really four key as we can define or adjust to, and then how the mind works between those different four bodies.
Yeah, I not just agree, but understand. many ways of putting yourself in a position of awareness. And sometimes the best way is to do nothing and just sit silently with no distractions and watch how these influences of the lower, higher mind energy field of your body, your emotional body, how they begin to provide input. And notice that the lower mind or the ego would be desiring to have some kind of accomplishment or goal for recognition, recognizing you as a, not necessarily as an individual, but in the form of being seen by others, being noticed and given recognition for something that you've done. And a higher mind is, first comes with intention. You're placing a specific energy with thought, combining that, and allowing it to lead you versus you leading it. Hopefully that makes sense. Where something else almost seems like it's controlling and directing you from a path of universal flow. And that flow can be easily discerned because with it comes a series of sequential events or actions that seem to connect with one another and leads to not a desired outcome, but the highest outcome for that particular intention that you're creating. An intention for having a better job, for example, or a better relationship may cause a number of discomforting conditions to occur in order for you to get back onto the particular design path that, in a sense, your soul has implemented for you in this particular life. And that's part of how you can begin training yourself to understand the difference between the two. That ego and the lower mind are always going to try to control any and all situations. It throws judgment, it throws entitlement, it throws out neediness, it throws out, the last one would be righteousness. And you could just monitor and watch your thoughts as you interact with anything and everyone. Watch news, watch a sporting event, just drive down the street. And you could be the discerner of those inputs. And as you begin to practice this, then you'll begin to really understand and see the difference between what's coming in from the spirit and soul essence, is how I refer to it, and that would be the higher conscious levels, the higher dimensional parts of ourselves, and then the patterns that we've been holding both in the subconscious and unconscious realm that have are really no longer serving our real purpose in life.
So in that, and I agree with that, so in that higher consciousness, and I don't want to say lower consciousness or a lower mind, we talk a lot about the heart and where the heart comes into that. And 2016 is about I am energy and the frequency of the heart energy and how that interacts with our ego and our mind. And part of moving into higher consciousness is to step out of that mind, to step into that higher mind, to allow the flow that Mark talks about, allow the flow to come in, but to be more in that heart energy, be more in that space of feeling. And that's where I think the emotional body, the emotional levels of our frequency really come into play in 2016, is really being aware of how do I feel? How am I reacting or acting based on my emotions? That's our heart opening up. And have any of you experienced heart pain or heart spasms or a pressure in your heart this year? That's that frequency shifting within your physical body to help connect the physical body and the emotional body to elevate us more into a higher spiritual body. Okay?
And when we're wondering, why is this focus on elevating our consciousness is coming in so strongly now? In a sense, we're seeing more of this statement, let's say, New Thought leaders, books, talking and bringing it to public awareness is because, it's due in part to new universal circuitry opening up, bringing in encodement, if you want to look at an encoding process as being something that vibrationally frequency coming through into the physical form through our membranes of the cell and influencing our DNA replication. And as this happens, then our levels, in a sense, of conscious awareness begin to increase. And each one of us can start to influence the other. Because the ionosphere is just a collection of all thoughts of around the world. And we are sharing the collective consciousness with humanity. And so as these openings occur, there's more emphasis on bringing about that change within ourselves. And that's a choice, really, to listen more and more to the influence of, I'll call it, just the soul's influence and the soul's energy. But the conduit for that, the pathway for that is so much smoother and clearer and precise than it was 20, 30, 40 years ago. And you're seeing that with the levels of acceptance that the younger generations have with each other. And in general, some of the, let's say, legislative actions that have occurred, the judicial actions that have occurred in the last 10, 15 years. And therefore, we're becoming more of a universal mind. And once again, that universal mind has no necessarily need to be distinct with categories and placements of what we represent to each other.
So there's more, you talk about more codes and light coming in, and we just celebrated a magnificent full moon and the summer solstice, and that's more light coming into the planet for us. And during that time period, there was more codes, more information delivered to us, and we were in a ready state. So that's why many of us had experiences about chaos in our life or shifts in our life to end things or to begin things in preparation for this light energy, this information to come in. And we are all collectors of this information. So as I'm collecting codes and information from the universe, and I might share that with you as we're doing today, we're teaching, but I collect it in my physical body. So it comes into my spiritual, my emotional, my energy, my physical body. And that's why we had this feedback too this morning, is we're bouncing off each other's fields. So even standing in the presence or being in the presence of someone that has codes, they are, or keys, they are unlocking codes within you. Just want to pause with that a moment. We all have our DNA, the helix of our DNA contains information or codes that have not been unlocked yet. And so one of the steps of moving into higher consciousness is being in the presence of those, or being in the presence of a collective group, or a group that mirrors or you resonate to on their vibrational frequency, is to actually unlock things that are already within you. So many of you might be having weird dreams or strange dreams, or just suddenly an increase in curiosity about spiritualism or metaphysical. You're being uncoded or encoded or decoded, however, whatever term you want to choose in that. But it's because you're interacting with someone that has a key that just fit into your lock and changed that or shifted that. And that's what's happening in 2016, 2017, 2018. We continue this evolution process. You can't avoid it. It's just what gets unlocked along the way.
And how about doing another heart exercise?
I think that's a great idea, to unlock some codes in the heart. I think that's this perfect timing.
So once again, you can stay seated. Just close your eyes and place your hands over your heart. And this is just with your thoughts. Just begin to tell yourself how much you appreciate the body, how much you love your heart, how much you care for yourself. Confirm that you are a divine being, accept that you are a divine being. And notice how your body reacts. Notice how your mind and emotion react. And you could come back around. Open your eyes. Now this type of an exercise is obviously very simple. But what this is showing you is how much subconscious programming, refer to it as the ego mind, how much of that is resisting those statements, and how even if there's a resistance and not a sense of feeling like you're genuinely making these statements, it's important to realize that as you continue to do this, these affirmations, I should say, as you continue to put positive motivational thoughts and words into yourself, it's beginning to alter that subconscious that's been programmed to feel the way it does and cause us to feel like we're lacking or in any capacity. Accepting that we're a divine being, it can be a mental concept, but acting like a divine being requires a level of conscious awareness.
So there's the practicality in what we're learning. So we're in this step of needing to practice the words that we're hearing. And as Mark says, you are a divine, energetic being. It's that acknowledgement of the divinity within you and shutting off some of those codes or keys that you had opened before. So there no longer is any room for those thoughts to be there. As you say, I am love, I am a divine being. It creates that space and shuts down or squishes out, I like to say, squishes out the other energy. So some of the emotions that we're going through, I know we jotted down a few, the victim, being righteousness, entitlement. Those are some emotions, or those are some events that we might be experiencing in ourselves or experiencing in others around us. And those are some of those emotions that literally need to get pushed out. They need to be shifted so that we can be more in that state of loving being and our divine energy. It's actually unnatural for us. At our core is love. It's unnatural for us to be in that state of neediness, righteousness, victimhood. So it feels, I guess, bad. I mean, for people that are in that state, it feels uncomfortable for them once they recognize what it is, because it's unnatural.
But until the recognition occurs, that ego part of ourselves demands that we do that. And the first way you can train yourself is just to watch, which I don't do, watch the news for 5 minutes and see how quickly you judge. Or listen to talk radio in the car and see how quickly you judge, because all of those things are programming for us to judge the actions of others. And let's just say in divine truth, what we experience is something that's been designed before we got here by our soul for us to experience. And therefore you have to step back and go, how can I judge something that I'm supposed to experience, even if it's harsh, even if it's a car accident or a very joyful type of experience that fills you with light energy. They're all experiences, and when we judge them, even if it's a joyous event, then we're, in a sense, categorizing the non-joyous types of experiences, and therefore we suddenly are calling them discomforting, bad experiences. In reality, we're always meant to be learning something from anything that happens to us. Now, there is truth in the fact that you can follow your path very distinctly and not have as many bumps, in the sense, with that path as others who may be having those bumps. But the purpose of having that reflection back to those who are off the path a bit is just to pull us back on that path. And there was a famous, not a famous statement, but a famous person once said, if your path is meant to be a street cleaner, be the best street cleaner you can be. And we have to come to terms with what we're really meant to be experiencing in this go-round. And that in itself is higher consciousness, is realizing that's how you're being guided and directed. Because eventually, like this is my personal experience, I was in that type of a position, but it led me to meet so many people that eventually helped me start my business, my webmaster, for example, and it led to what I'm doing now, in a sense, professionally for a living, and that's I'm living my life purpose. But if I wasn't willing to be humble and follow this direction, which I didn't necessarily want to when I got to Sedona, then where I'm at now would never have occurred. So that this is a kind of a personal anecdote of how following higher consciousness can cause you to think that you're doing something beneath yourself. Hopefully that you can relate to that, because that the soul, a higher mind, always knows what's going to happen next and what's meant to happen next. We just have to be in more of that accepting place and discerning the difference between, okay, I've got to do that even though I don't want to do it, versus I'm not going to do it because I don't like it. Then you're starting to understand the polarity between the ego-driven thought and the, in a sense, soul's inspiration, the instinctual thought versus the intuition. And you have to train yourself, and you have to be observant. You have to, I always say it's just being consciously aware. Higher level of consciousness requires conscious awareness. 90% of our thinking comes from the unconscious realm, and you're never going to master that 90% until you start at the 11, 12, 13% level.
So let's talk for a moment about really the purpose of moving into higher consciousness and why now. And with your astrology background, there are a lot of planetary shifts this year that are pushing us and are going to continue to push us into September. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, this year, just starting with this year, not the things leading up to it, has been called the year of initiation, the year of purification. The eclipses have been in planetary signs that have a lot to do with coming to terms with how we need to have a better understanding of what our mind, body, and spirit.
Just an angel calling.
Spirit need. Sorry. That's the ego of the phone, and it's also letting go of all the pain, the suffering, both in our personal life and our ancestral lineage, and assisting humanity to do the same. Because if you think about energy fields, any imbalance, any disharmony in our energy field will continually cause, like a magnet, cause that experience to come back to us. So the eclipses, let's say they're in Virgo and Pisces, they were in March, they're in September, they were in last September, and that's when it really got started. And those two signs have a lot to do with humility and service to humanity, health, and of course well-being, and even connecting to the integrated field. So that would mean we can look at each other and look at plant life, look at animal life, as all sharing a particular vibration, spirit vibration in a sense. So these eclipses are bringing those things to the surface for us to see what needs to, what is out of alignment and harmony, and what needs to be, in a sense, released, if you want to say what needs to be healed, or just simply acknowledged. I think nowadays, acknowledging a condition and saying, I release you back to source, tends to be a very simple and expedient way of moving in onto the next particular level or issue that is needed to be addressed. If you aren't able to do that, then of course it's going to continue to repeat. So the eclipses are one example. There's a alignment between three planets. They're called Jupiter, Saturn, and Neptune. And that's almost like conflicting influences, because one wants to have order and structure, the other one dissolves whatever comes across, it creates this, illusions as well. And then the third one, it's almost a social, goal-oriented energy. So what we're feeling inside is, and have been, are overwhelming feelings and emotions of not having things that would go the way we would wish them to go, of facing all the shadow aspects, the inner child aspects of our psyche that are wanting us to recognize them, acknowledge and even thank them for being there. And the awareness that this is all part of our makeup. And as such, there's no reason for us to judge those harsh and what would be maybe negative feelings, just allowing them to present themselves. And a lot of you who had kids, you have to allow that child to scream and have a tantrum to play itself out. And we're doing that within ourselves too, with the combination of energies from these three particular planets. Leading up to this year was for 3 years has been a major aspect between Pluto and Uranus. These planets represent collective conscious influences. And over the last 3 years, we've seen a lot of shifts occur on the global scale. And just recently, this past weekend, and we saw that with the election in England. So sometimes just seeing what happens globally and in the country, for me especially, it's a reflection of what's taking place with the planetary energies. But the lead-in for 3 years has been energetically forcing us to internally have a revolution, as opposed to what happened in the 60s with the same two planets in different signs and in different aspects. So the changes now have to come from within. It goes into the collective ionosphere thought bubble of humanity, and that begins to shift another person or many other people, depending on what level, in a sense, you can reach. So that's what these energies have been bringing forward up until this year. And so this year with the eclipses, it's like, okay, you're laying out on an operating table, and all the things that need to be rearranged, taken out of your energetic field, the composition of all these multiple bodies, the chakras, the dimensional parts of ourselves. It's all coming together for us to realize how complex we are, how many areas, in a sense, we exist in, the influences that we can have on these areas, how even we can heal the body without taking a pill. We can heal the body with just conscious intention, potentially a useful tool, like a crystal, laying on the ground, holding a tree, simple things like that. Because it's bringing us back to a center of divine alignment. Divine alignment, really think about it. Divine alignment isn't going to be complicated. And so attaining higher consciousness isn't going to be complicated. It just requires the effort. And the planets now, they are opening up that effort. But we're really, really seeing the resistance of our ego and the collective ego of humanity, like those little kids, just rebelling and insisting that it gets recognized and given attention first before that alignment occurs. But once again, you give it the attention, you recognize it, and you even respect it, and you'll find that alignment doesn't have as much resistance. So even doing something that seems like it's acquiescing towards the ego will benefit you in attaining that higher state of awareness. And hopefully that's an example that you can relate to.
I want to go back to a little bit on Pluto, because Pluto is about death and rebirth. And in that death and rebirth, that's a good thing. So if we watch about some of the things that are happening around the globe or things that are happening in your life, it is those big shifts that are pushing you, and they're uncomfortable, and we don't like them, but that is divine. And so as you talk about being in divine alignment, there really isn't an effort. It is just being. So When I think about moving into higher consciousness, really higher consciousness is getting back to my normal self. It really is just discovering, just coming back to who I am at my depth and my core. And we have all these external influences that have shaped us or have influenced who we think we're supposed to be in society. And when we just quiet our mind, open our hearts, allow the divine flow, we come back to a more natural being, a more peaceful being, a more just a natural place of what we're supposed to be here for, that divine purpose.
That famous statement, be still and know that you're God. There's a reason why that's been, that type of a statement in many cultures is slightly different, but that statement continues to follow us through the generations.
So when we talk about why now, it's because there's no better time than right now, right? It's kind of like putting off those big decisions in your life. You just keep saying tomorrow, 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 tomorrow. The universe is saying now. And so now is a good time for all of us. And we're being supported by our communities. The fact that you're sitting here today in this community, you're being supported by the community, being supported by the planets, loved ones. But you're also being supported by your heart, the divine energy within.
Well, one reason when we say why now, the ladder of technology has presented a platform where it does, wherever you're living in the world, you could tap in, tune in, learn, connect. Therefore, that collective influence is continually feeding us, both in a sense for distraction as well as for upliftment. And no one has an excuse anymore of staying isolated, of closing themselves off because it's so obvious. Weather patterns, economic conditions, food shortages, wherever it's happening in the world, we're both aware of it, and we're seeing how it impacts us, even in a small town in northern Arizona, to major cities around the world.
I want to talk a little bit about choice, because I do believe we have a choice in our evolution. And what I'm noticing most recently is there's just been a lot of judgment in the media. Social media allows us to judge people from a distance. And I experienced something yesterday. I was at a festival, and there happened to be a small child that got separated from his mom. And so I made an announcement that, there's a lost mom in the crowd. Can you come and get him? But later on, there was a woman that approached me, very judgmental about the mom, and she wanted to know the situation. She's like, that was just awful that mom lost that child, became separated. And she stood by me, and she kept saying the same thing. And Jill, you're nodding, you were there with me. She kept saying the same thing. It's like, I would never let that happen. How could that happen here? That's so dangerous. And I just said, life happens. And I just stood there with my heart open. But I'm personally noticing that, in that situation, my role is not to engage in that judgment, not to participate in that energy. My role at that particular moment was just to maybe shed light on a different perspective, maybe give some love to the situation. And knowing that nothing bad was going to happen. I wasn't going to feed into that. But I'm noticing that as we go through shifts, we are quick, or many are quick to maybe judge. And that's a choice for all of you that I'd just like to mention today is check yourself in that. Is who around you might be judging you that you just don't want to take on. You don't want to take on their energy, and you don't want to participate in theirs.
Very good point, because that's just one example of how you can begin to confront the ego, the needs of the ego, and manage it in a sense. And then as you continue to manage it, you'll find that your level and your perspective of whatever's taking place, it goes back into what I said earlier. You're looking at everything as an experience. And so the individual who, in this case, lost their kid, that's their experience. Because down the road, maybe she realizes in large crowds she needs to have a closer attention span on the children. So you could see how something's, in a sense, bringing an awareness to her, as opposed to it being a bad event or a negative event. And these recent the recent events where kids have been eaten by some creature or whatever, that's also bringing in a more of a global awareness to how important it is, to keep that monitor on your wandering children, and not necessarily to judge it, because we could really expand our view of what these events are, and maybe the parents and that child, before they came here, volunteered to be an example for humanity. And when you start looking at things like from that perspective, then judgment goes out the window.
I think you're touching on a good point, that we're all here for roles. We're playing particular roles for others in our lives that we don't even know we're in that role for someone else to experience something. So things happen. I want to just take some time if there's any questions in the room here. Yes, we have a microphone.
Today you use the word awareness a lot. If I understand right, you said the key to shift between body, mind, spirit, emotional bodies is to shift your awareness. But what is the nature of awareness itself? Is awareness part of our conscious mind, or is awareness animal by itself, or is awareness like a bridge between higher self and consciousness? So what is the physical nature of awareness? What actually creates awareness? Where it resides and what it is physically? Thank you.
That's a great question. At its core, what's awareness? If I can rephrase that, what's awareness for us? From a physical, an emotional, spiritual, what do we experience? Is that what is awareness? That's a big question. Thank you for that. It is. It's a great question, though, because we all experience awareness very differently. And I'll give you my definition, and then you can. So my definition of awareness is when I'm in divine flow, when I feel like I am in my divine flow of energy, my happiness, my joy, and I'm aware, I am cognizant of how I feel, how I'm presenting to the world, how I'm receiving in the world. To me, I'm open to all the triggers, all the information, all the sensory, my sight, my hearing, my ears, even my intuitive or my psychic mediumship is open. And I'm using all those elements to receive information, and it feels good.
And I would add a discerning experience. If you almost want to, you could look at it as a polar reaction to whatever is taking place. You're discerning where this conscious thought is coming from. If it's coming from an internal wounded part of yourself, if it's coming from the influence of another person's thought, if it's coming from the influence of the energy of our soul. So for me, awareness it kind of comes into the category or way of having a discernment with a sensation and experience of that can be registered both mentally, emotionally, physically, etherically. And once that's identified in a sense, it becomes a reference. So the awareness of being closed-minded versus you educate yourself, or you're taught, or you go to an ashram, or you go to a retreat, and you come out of that experience a changed person, because you have become more aware of all these external conditions. So I look at it as a bit of a discerning experience.
I want to add to my definition too, because awareness sometimes is uncomfortable. I experience things in my life that I go, I don't want to experience that again. But it's a indicator for me to get back on path or take a different path. But it's that alertness or that understanding that I don't like that, or I do like that, or that feels good or doesn't feel good, that then I have the choice to adjust my behaviors in that. And sometimes we're so numb, we don't even know what those indicators are. So we just go day by day by day. We get up, go to work, come home, sleep, get up, go to work. We don't have the indicators of where our path is taking us in life. But when we become aware or alert to our emotions, our physical body, then it starts to help us move on that path a little bit better.
I could maybe just give you a quick example. When you're driving in heavy traffic, there's times when you're very alert and you can see the movement of cars ahead of you or cars on the side of you. That's awareness. And when you're not aware, when you're locked in thought about what just happened or paying rent or whatever, things that are distracting, then that's typically when you get close calls or even get into accidents. So you could just monitor yourself when you're just driving down the road, once again, on a busy interstate, freeway, and notice how when you are really consciously aware, everything, you're picking up the field, the flow of everything around you.
Question here.
I think you're good.
Okay. I wonder about, for example, cell phones and Facebook and all these things, and I worry about these things actually being a threat to our awareness. I see them as the total opposite of aware, because I see all these young people almost like hooked on checking these probably meaningless messages on cell phones and things like that. And my idea of awareness is going into a vision quest where you don't eat or drink for 4 days, and that's where you really become aware of what's going on. So should it worry about technology just destroying us and making us so numb that we're just constantly checking these Facebook messages from people we don't know, or these phone messages that really don't matter in the end? Because 20 years ago, we didn't even have access to that.
We were just talking about that last night. There's two ways to look at that. What if that technology was purposeful in having us go through that disconnect in order for us to come back and understand where we're disconnected, so we find ways to reconnect? And another one is it's a way to numb us from the transformation that we're supposed to be going through. So there's a couple different ways to look at it, but it does impact us. I think it has purpose. I think that we'll swing one way, and then we'll come back as a community.
And I'm one of those Vision Quest people. That's what brings a great awareness to me. But when you want to compare something with technology, like you just said, just think about alcohol, think about food, think about cars, think about guns. All those can be abused and are abused. And now technology is kind of like taking the place of excessive drinking or excessive eating, or whatever that addictive. It's just an addictive energy, and I share the same feelings. You wonder how much influence it's going to have. One person mentioned something that was kind of comical. They said, in the old days, meditation was sitting in a lotus position and having your hands in a mudra and just meditating for hours. And the modern day or current contemporary meditation is turning your cell phone off and looking at it for an hour.
All right. Yes. Okay. We have one more.
Okay. So, Laurie, you and Mark both talked about DNA and our evolution and transformation. I'm intrigued by that, but I don't know necessarily that I understand it. I even participated in the DNA activation process a couple of times, but I don't know what to make of it. I don't know what I am experiencing afterwards. So can you say a little bit more about that? DNA and evolving.
Okay, well, the scientist named Lipton out of Stanford, he showed how frequencies, and this helps you understand more about how planets and astrology can affect our lives. Frequencies, vibrations come through the cell membrane and they get transferred. The cell membrane is really a receptor, and it gets transferred into the DNA's replication. And so encodement, that can come in the form of studying particular material, doing like yogic breathing, going into deep gamma delta waves of the brain where you're, those are deep meditative states, which doesn't require a lot of meditation, it just requires you to go there. going into a salt cave and having sound healing. All those things can promote this. The DNA replication isn't going to necessarily be overly dramatic. Sometimes it is. If you've known people that have gone to ashrams in like India, and they come back completely disoriented. They don't even know how to function in our world or our lifestyle. That's an example, in a sense, an extreme example. What's more common when you get DNA activation in a facilitated treatment, or listening to encoded frequencies off the internet, which there's a lot of, just observe the shift, because the DNA can be activated and shifted, but you could go back to the old too. There's our brain especially has, with the neural pathways, you could heal and clear a traumatic pathway, but the things that created it, if you don't maintain that change, then you go back into the old habits. And so you can see the same thing with rehab centers. A lot of people go right back to the old things because they haven't gone into that total shift and allowed the total shift to occur over the course of a long period of time. Hopefully that helps you understand a little better. It's not rocket science.
All right, thank you. Thank you. I think now we have our offering, so we could facilitate that. Thank you so very much. Yeah, so as you join hands, take a moment and actually feel the pulse in the hand that you're holding. I have to just say my hands are burning up here. So I'm going to join you guys here in a moment. I need to move some energy around the room. But notice the person that's next to you, the pulse, the energy that you're sharing, the exchange of energy. Notice your connectedness to the ground. And I'm going to turn it over to Mark here and join the circle.
Once again, close your eyes. And each of us is addressing now the essence of our spirit and soul. And we command our lower body's physical form to accept this flow, this presence, to be embodied, to be welcomed free willingly. Breathe it in. Now we consciously are addressing the Earth Mother beneath us, acknowledging the support that she provides all life. And we also acknowledge the universal divine presence which is responsible for the creation of all life. We, in our minds, look to the outside, animal life, tree life, plant life, the water, elements of nature, acknowledging their presence and importance in their interactions with us. And we call upon the angelic realms, archangels, angels, to bring in their healing influences, their guidance and support in both times of our need and times where we're not even aware of their influence, but still wanting their guidance and support. We acknowledge the levels of masters and goddesses. And we also are acknowledging our ancestors, the ancient ones who've walked these lands that we now have structures on, for their presence, their blueprint is affecting our actions, our thoughts, how we live. We're showing our reverence, our respect for what has brought us to this point, acknowledging the significance of every single distinct aspect and part of this material and etheric connections to the dimension we're in. And we finally acknowledge ourselves for bringing forth a divine energy, character, quality that is contributing in some manner and way to humanity. And we finally thank ourselves, and we thank those that are here participating. We thank you.
And as you just connect, raise your hands, bring that energy into your heart